Welcome to this segment of Mag Matters, where today we will talk about ozone and what a recent EPA decision means for our region. I'd like to welcome Phil McNeely, Director of the Maricopa County Air Quality Department. Welcome, Phil. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Eric.
Yeah. So let's start. Talk about what you guys do at the Maricopa County Air Quality Department.
We regulate air quality across the county. And that entails monitoring. So we monitor countywide. We have 25 monitors that look for the criteria air pollutants. That tells us how we're doing in terms of our air quality. We also issue permits. So we issue construction permits. Last year we issued 4,500 dust control permits. We issued stationary source permits. So basically any business that has emissions like gas stations, machine shops, dry cleaners. Then we also inspect all of those facilities. And then a large part of what we do is outreach. So we have an outreach component where we run campaigns just for awareness campaigns to the general public.
So recently EPA redesignated this area for ozone. So why don't we start with, what is ozone?
Yeah, ozone is a challenge. So ozone is a gas. You can't see it, you can't smell it. It's odorless, and it's composed of 3 oxygen molecules. So I'm sure everyone's heard of the ozone layer. You say, that's a good thing, isn't it? Yeah, so it does form naturally up in the atmosphere, and it protects us from the sun's radiation. We're not talking about the ozone layer, we're talking about ground level ozone. And so the challenge with that is exhaust from our man-made pollution, exhaust from cars. We talked about gas stations, maybe evaporating fuel, evaporating paints, VOCs. Those combine together, and in the summertime when there's a lot of heat and a lot of sunlight, it creates this ground level ozone, 3 oxygen molecules together. When you breathe ozone, it's not good for you. It can irritate your lungs. If you're exposed to it for years on end, it can cause lung damage. If you have a pre-existing condition, it can trigger like an asthma attack if you have asthma. So because of this, the EPA regulates ozone.
So what did the EPA do recently in terms of the designation for this region?
Yeah, so our air quality has gotten better and better and better over the last 3 decades. If you graph it, our ozone is much better than it was 30 years ago or 20 years ago or 10 years ago. But what EPA does is every 5 years they evaluate the current standards. And based on the current science, they'll say if the standard is adequate or not to protect public health. So we have a new standard in 2015, and that standard went from 75 to 70. So currently, we were in marginal because we're currently about 75 is currently what we're seeing at the monitors. We didn't make the 70 standard in the time frame they gave us. So now they're bumping us up from marginal non-attainment to moderate.
I drive by coffee houses, and there are long lines of people waiting at the drive-thru and fast food restaurants and all that. Does that add to the ozone issue we have in the region?
Tailpipe emissions are a significant part of our emissions inventory. So about 50% of what we call NOx is coming from tailpipe emissions. All the facilities that we regulate that we talked about, that only accounts for about 25% of those NOx emissions. So half of the emissions that cause ozone are coming from tailpipes, so trucks and things. So when you look at that, that's significant. And it's really amazing about idling though. So when you go idle, when you sit through a drive-thru or pick up your child and let the car running, that accounts to 3.5 tons of NOx emissions every day, which is very significant, it's about 6% of the traffic emissions.
Phil, what other things can people do to help us deal with this ozone issue here in Maricopa County?
Changing personal behavior is a huge benefit to us if they choose to ride the bus 1 day a week, or especially during a high pollution advisory day, or take the light rail, park the car and walk in like we discussed. We also have other programs for gas-powered lawnmowers. So if you go out and mow your lawn in the summertime, when the high ozone problem is, you can actually turn in your gas-powered lawnmower and the county will give you $150 to buy an electric lawnmower at Home Depot. If you fuel after dark or later in the day, don't fuel on the way to work or at lunch, maybe fuel on the way home from work, that'd be helping us out with the ozone issue. So simple things like that can really make a difference for ozone.
If we don't solve the issue to meet these air quality standards, what happens to the region?
Currently, we just got bumped up to moderate. So what EPA requires us to do is to review our rules. So we may have to make our rules more stringent on our sources, our stationary sources. But the challenge, we have a unique challenge in Maricopa County. As we talked about 50% of the emissions are coming from vehicles, which we don't regulate. So that's why we are pushing these outreach events where a simple choice by not idling your car to drive-through can make a huge difference. If everyone did that, it's 3.5 tons a day.
And our air is getting better, no doubt about it. And we do have some days that are worse than others when that's going to happen. But overall, I think you and your team have just done a great job in making us do things that can improve our air quality here in this region.
Well, thank you. And MAG's a huge partner and a huge reason for that success.
Yeah.
So we enjoy working with you.
Appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
You can find this video and other MAG Matter topics on YouTube under MAG Communications.